Road nightmare. The highway stretched into the darkness, an endless ribbon of asphalt cutting through the desolate landscape. Alex Carter, a long-haul trucker with more miles behind him than he cared to count, gripped the wheel of his Peterbilt, eyes flicking between the road and the glowing green numbers on his dashboard. 2:17 a.m. The road was empty, save for his truck's headlights carving twin tunnels of light through the void. The hum of the tires, the occasional crackle of the CB radio, and the low growl of the engine were his only companions. Then he saw him. A lone figure stood by the side of the highway, arm extended, thumb pointing skyward. A hitchhiker. Alex almost drove past. Common sense told him to keep going. He didn't like picking up strangers, especially in the dead of night. But something about the man gave him pause. His posture was eerily still, too stiff. His clothes looked clean but old-fashioned. The road was empty in both directions. Where had he come from? Alex's foot hovered over the brake. He didn't know why, but he slowed down. The truck groaned as it decelerated. He pulled onto the shoulder, the air brakes hissing as the massive vehicle settled. In his side mirror, the man was already moving toward the cab. Alex unlocked the door. The hitchhiker climbed in. The man settled into the passenger seat with a quiet, measured motion. He was tall, thin, his features sharp but hard to place. Ageless in a way that made Alex uneasy. His clothes were strange. A button-up shirt, slacks, and a dark overcoat that looked about 50 years out of date. His shoes were polished, too clean for someone hitchhiking on a lonely highway. "Thanks for the ride," the stranger said. His voice was smooth, almost melodic. Alex nodded, pulling back onto the highway. "Where you headed?" The man smiled slightly. "Wherever you're going." Alex felt a chill crawl up his spine. "That so?" The stranger turned his head, studying him with dark eyes that seemed to reflect nothing. "You don't remember me, do you?" Alex's grip on the wheel tightened. "Should I?" Pause. "Then, you will." Alex swallowed. The highway stretched ahead, empty, endless. He had the sudden, unsettling thought that he could drive forever and never find another town, another exit. Just him, his truck, and this stranger who claimed to know him. They drove in silence for a while, the road slipping by beneath them. The stranger didn't fidget, didn't move much at all. He just sat, watching the road, as if he already knew where they were going. Then he spoke. "You've been here before." Alex frowned. "What do you mean?" "This road. This night. Me." A cold pressure settled in Alex's chest. "Listen, buddy. I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but you don't remember the last time you picked me up, do you?" Alex's fingers flexed against the wheel. "That's not possible." But something stirred in the back of his mind. A whisper of familiarity. A memory just out of reach. The stranger smiled, as if he could hear Alex's thoughts. "It always starts the same way. You see me on the side of the road. You stop. We talk. And then you remember." Alex's heart pounded. "Remember what?" The stranger leaned closer. "What you did." Alex's mind raced. His past was a blur of highways and truck stops, long nights and longer roads. But there was something wrong lurking just beyond his memory. The stranger watched him, waiting. Then, like a floodgate opening, it hit him. The storm, the rain hammering against his windshield, the flash of lightning illuminating the road, the figure appearing out of nowhere, the impact, the sickening crunch of bone and metal. Alex gripped the wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. "No," he whispered. "Yes," the stranger said, his voice calm. "You hit me. You left me to die on this road." Alex's breath came in short, panicked gasps. "That's not possible. I would have remembered." "But you didn't," the stranger said. "Not the first time. Not the second. Not the 100th. Alex's eyes darted to the stranger's hands. Pale. Too pale. And then he saw it, the faint shimmer, the way his edges blurred slightly, like a photograph out of focus. Not real. Not alive. "You're not here," Alex choked out. The stranger smiled. "Neither are you." The truck lurched. The headlights flickered. The road wavered. and suddenly Alex wasn't behind the wheel anymore. He was outside, rain pouring down, staring at the wreckage of his own truck, the shattered windshield, the twisted metal. His own body slumped over the wheel, motionless, and standing beside the wreck, the hitchhiker. Alex's mind reeled. "No, this isn't real." "It is," the stranger said. "You've been reliving this night over and over. You pick me up, you remember, and then it starts again." The wind howled, the storm raged, and as Alex stared at his own lifeless form, he felt himself being pulled away, back into the cycle, back to the road, back to the moment when he would see the hitchhiker again, and again, and again, forever. Alex gasped as his hands clenched the wheel. The truck's engine hummed beneath him, the dashboard lights glowing softly. The highway stretched into the darkness, empty except for his rig cutting through the night. His heart pounded, his breath coming fast and shallow. Hadn't he just? He glanced to his right. The passenger seat was empty. The road was quiet. It was just a dream, a bad dream. But then, up ahead, a lone figure stood by the side of the highway, arm extended, thumb raised. A hitchhiker. Alex's stomach twisted. His hands went cold on the wheel. No, not again. He pressed his foot down on the gas. He wasn't stopping. Not this time. As he passed the hitchhiker, he forced himself to look straight ahead, not daring to glance in the mirror. His heart thundered. The truck roared forward. The road swallowed the figure behind him. Gone. Alex exhaled a shaky breath, his grip on the wheel loosening slightly. He did it. He broke the cycle. He changed your mind. The voice came from the passenger seat. Alex's blood turned to ice. Slowly, mechanically, he turned his head. The hitchhiker sat beside him. Same calm expression. Same dark eyes watching him, knowing him. "You can't outrun this," the stranger said. Alex let out a strangled sound, a mix of fear and denial. "What do you want from me?" The hitchhiker tilted his head. "It's not about what I want. It's about what you are." Alex swallowed hard. "And what am I?" The hitchhiker's smile widened just slightly. "A ghost." Alex's breath caught. "No, that's not true." But the moment the words left his mouth, he felt it. The wrongness, the weightlessness in his limbs, the faint shimmer in the air around him. The way the radio didn't crackle, the way the CB was silent, too silent. Memories flooded back. The crash, the impact, the blood. His own reflection in the shattered windshield, staring back with lifeless eyes. He had died on this road. He had been driving this truck ever since, trapped in an endless loop, unable to move on. And the hitchhiker, "Who are you?" Alex whispered. The stranger's expression softened, almost understanding. "Think of me as a guide, a reminder. You're not the only one caught on this road, Alex. There are many like you, lost souls, clinging to the wheel, convinced they still have a destination." Alex's chest ached with something deeper than fear, regret. "How do I stop it?" he asked. "How do I get out?" The hitchhiker watched him for a long moment before answering. "You have to let go. Let go of the truck, of the road, of everything that kept him clinging to the illusion of movement." Alex's hands trembled on the wheel. "I don't know how." The hitchhiker leaned back, folding his hands in his lap. "You will." The road stretched ahead, endless as always. But now, Alex saw it for what it was, a limbo, a prison built from his own denial. He reached for the CB radio. His fingers passed through it like smoke. Not real. He looked into the side mirror. His reflection wasn't there. Not real. He exhaled a shaking breath, looking at the hitchhiker. "And if I don't let go?" The stranger's expression darkened slightly. "Then we do this again, and again, until you do." Alex looked at the road one last time, and then he closed his eyes. He let go. The highway was empty again. A lone truck sat on the shoulder, abandoned, rust creeping along its surface. The cab was empty, the driver long gone, and on the side of the road, a new figure stood. A man in a trucker's jacket, his expression lost, confused. A lone hitchhiker waiting for a ride, waiting for the next lost soul to come along. The road stretched into the night, endless and silent. In the distance, headlights pierced the darkness. A massive 18-wheeler rumbled toward the waiting figure on the roadside. The new hitchhiker, Alex, stood with his thumb raised, just as the stranger before him had done. He didn't know why. He only knew he was supposed to. The truck slowed. Air brakes hissed. The driver, a middle-aged man with tired eyes and a face weathered by years on the road, leaned over and popped open the passenger door. "Where you headed?" the driver asked. Alex hesitated. Something deep inside him whispered that he had done this before, that he had stood where this man was sitting, that he had asked the same question. But the memory was foggy, distant. "Wherever you're going," Alex answered. The driver shrugged. "Climb in." Alex did. The door shut with a heavy click. The truck rumbled forward, disappearing down the endless road. Somewhere behind them, another figure appeared on the roadside, motionless, waiting. The highway never ended. The drivers changed. The hitchhikers changed. But the road remained the same. The hum of the truck's engine filled the silence as Alex sat in the passenger seat, watching the dark road ahead. The driver, a man named Rick, had been on the road for over 16 hours, his fingers gripping the wheel like a lifeline. He glanced at Alex occasionally, his brows furrowing as if something about his passenger unsettled him. "You don't talk much, do you?" Rick muttered, breaking the silence. Alex turned his head slowly. The words felt familiar. Had he said them before? Had he heard them before? "I talk when there's something worth saying," Alex replied. The words left his mouth automatically, as if they weren't entirely his own. Rick chuckled dryly. "Yeah? You remind me of someone I picked up once. Guy looked a lot like you." Alex stiffened. "What do you mean?" Rick frowned, his fingers tightening on the wheel. "Dunno. Just déjà vu, I guess. You ever get that feeling? Like you've lived this moment before?" Alex felt something cold coil in his gut. His mind whispered that this conversation had already happened. The road ahead, the truck's vibrations beneath him, even Rick's tired voice. It was all too familiar. His throat felt dry. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I get that feeling a lot." Rick sighed. "Guess that's what happens when you drive long enough. The road starts playing tricks on you." Alex turned to look at him. "How long have you been driving?" Rick smirked. "Feels like forever." Alex shivered. What if it had been? What if Rick was just another lost soul, caught in the same cycle? The thought made his skin crawl. They drove in silence for a while, the road stretching endlessly before them. Then Alex started noticing things. A mile marker passed by, mile 66. A few minutes later, another marker, mile 66 again. Alex's chest tightened. "Rick, did you see that?" Rick didn't respond at first. His eyes were locked on the road, his knuckles white on the wheel. "See what?" "The mile marker. It didn't change." Rick let out a nervous laugh. "Must be tired, man. You sure you read it right?" But then it happened again. Another mile 66. Alex's breath hitched. "Rick, I don't think we're getting anywhere." Rick swallowed hard. "Just tired, that's all. Road messes with your head." But Alex wasn't so sure anymore. He turned and looked out the window, nothing but darkness. The landscape wasn't changing. It was like they were driving in place, trapped in a painting of a highway that never moved forward. His stomach twisted. He knew this feeling. Alex turned to Rick. "You don't remember picking me up, do you?" Rick frowned. "Course I do. Saw you on the side of the road. Thumb out." He hesitated, blinking like something wasn't adding up in his own mind. Alex leaned forward. "Think harder." Rick's face darkened. His breathing grew shallow. "Wait, he shook his head. I don't remember stopping." The temperature in the cab seemed to drop. The truck's engine droned, an unnatural hum that suddenly felt too perfect. "Rick," Alex whispered, "when's the last time you stopped driving?" Rick opened his mouth, closed it. His fingers trembled on the wheel. I don't. His voice faded. His eyes darted to the side mirror. His expression shifted from confusion to horror. Alex followed his gaze, and in the mirror there was no reflection of the truck. No road, no world, just darkness. Rick gasped. Jesus Christ! The truck jerked violently. The dashboard lights flickered. The engine roared, deafening. Rick yanked the wheel, but the truck didn't respond. The road had disappeared. They were falling. Alex opened his eyes. The dashboard lights glowed softly. The engine hummed beneath him. The road stretched ahead, empty except for the dark figure standing on the shoulder, thumb raised. A hitchhiker. Rick sat in the driver's seat, breathing heavily, hands gripping the wheel so tightly his knuckles had gone pale. His eyes were wild with confusion and fear. Alex exhaled shakily. He looked at Rick. "Now you understand," he murmured. Rick turned to him, realization dawning in his eyes. "We're stuck, aren't we?" Alex nodded slowly. The truck rumbled forward. Behind them, the road remained empty, except for the new figure standing on the side, waiting. Rick's breathing was ragged. His hands trembled on the wheel as if he could still feel the truck falling into that void where no road existed. But now, everything looked normal again. The truck was moving. The asphalt stretched into the distance. The new hitchhiker, stood by the roadside, waiting. Rick swallowed hard. I don't remember stopping the truck." "You didn't," Alex said. "It resets on its own." Rick turned to him, his face pale. "Then how do we stop it?" Alex hesitated. He had asked the same question once, had heard the same empty answer. "You let go," he whispered. Rick shook his head violently. No, that's not. There has to be another way." Alex sighed. "That's what I thought too. I fought it. I drove for years, convinced there was a way out. But every time I ended up back here." Rick's jaw clenched. His knuckles went white on the wheel. "I won't accept that." Alex just watched him. The truck rumbled closer to the hitchhiker. Rick's foot hovered over the brake. Alex knew the moment well. The moment of decision. The illusion of choice. He had been the driver once. Just like Rick. He had seen the hitchhiker the same way Rick was seeing him now. And every time, the road had forced the decision. "You can't fight it," Alex murmured. Rick ignored him. His jaw tightened. "Watch me." The truck sped up. Alex's eyes widened. "Rick, I'm not stopping." Rick's voice was desperate, defiant. "I'm gonna break this loop." The hitchhiker stood motionless as the truck roared toward him. Rick gritted his teeth and slammed the gas pedal. The speedometer climbed 50, 60, 70. He was gonna plow right through the hitchhiker. Alex tensed. "It won't work. It never works." "Rick, stop." But Rick didn't. The hitchhiker remained still, his thumb raised, his expression unchanged as the truck closed the distance. 5 feet, 2 feet, impact. The truck passed right through the hitchhiker, not like hitting a ghost, like the truck wasn't real at all. For a split second, Rick and Alex saw everything. 1,000 versions of the road, 1,000 trucks, 1,000 drivers, endless loops, all stacked on top of each other like shattered glass. And then, blackness, the sound of screaming metal, tires skidding, the horn blaring endlessly, and suddenly, Rick gasped, his hands gripping the wheel. The truck's engine hummed beneath him. The dashboard lights glowed softly. The highway stretched into the distance. Everything was silent. Rick's eyes darted to the empty passenger seat. Alex was gone. Rick swallowed, his throat dry. His fingers twitched. Then, up ahead, a figure stood by the roadside, thumb raised. Rick's heart pounded. A hitchhiker. His breath caught in his throat. No, But the memory was already fading. His foot hovered over the brake. The cycle was beginning again. And deep inside, some part of Rick knew. It always would. Rick's hands were shaking. His breath uneven. The truck rumbled forward, headlights cutting through the endless night. Up ahead, the hitchhiker stood, waiting. Somewhere in the back of his mind, something whispered, "Don't stop. Keep driving. Break the loop." But another voice, quieter, more certain, told him the truth. There is no breaking the loop. His foot lowered onto the brake pedal. The truck slowed. The hitchhiker didn't move. Rick reached for the door handle, and as the figure climbed in beside him, as the door shut with a soft click, the road stretched ahead, dark, empty, eternal. The cycle continued. It always would.